one of the questions that I wanted to get to at a certain point was the matter of cost overruns and uncertain build times that you have mentioned. And this is something that has been referred to by some of the advocates that have advocated against nuclear. How could a country like South Africa better address that? We know with Kusile and Medupe there were a number of missteps and practices that were criticized by organized business and others. Is that something that a company like Group 5 could recommend solutions for?
Before, because you asked the question, is it the right time to start the nuclear process?
Okay.
And I want to answer because it's complementary. Nuclear process is not a short time process because even if you select a vendor by the end of the year, it will take time before the first unit will be online. Not because people are bad, but because we have to go to a full process of licensing, which is unique in the industry. And this process of licensing takes years. So that means if we consider that including the process of licensing, you are very optimistic, you said 10 years. Okay? And 10 years, if, as he proposed, you will take the decision in 10 years, and you take 10 years to build the first plant, that means you will be in 2035. 2035, you will have minimum 20 gigawatt, even 25 gigawatt, no more existing on the existing network. Okay? So that means what we have seen in the country in 2007, 8, 9, load shedding, what was the reason? The reason was very simple. No decision beginning of 2000 when ESCOM asked the government to take decision for new capacity. Everybody was blind. We cannot be blind a second time. I mean, we have to go to the process, and as it has been told, nobody knows the price of a nuclear plant except the people there, okay? Nobody else. But we know the price of a nuclear plant only when we will have the document telling what is requesting, which risk will be bear by the vendors, and which one will be taken by the government or the utility. Until this time, you cannot give a price. I can ask you the question, what is the price of a car? If you can answer to me? No. Now, if I ask you what is the price of a Mercedes car, can you answer to me? No. Now, if I ask you what is the price of this type of Mercedes car, you have a chance to answer to me. Today, we are exactly in this position. So that means the government has to go to a process. At the end of the process, you can all the time decide to proceed or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Shall we go back to the question around overruns and overruns and uncertain build times?
There's a lot of attention on cost and time overruns on nuclear power plants. Just a little bit of a cutback. The nuclear industry has been around for how many years, Eve? About 50 years, 60 years?
40 years.
40 years, okay. And there's a big focus onto making nuclear power plants safer for all of us. It's something that they put a lot of attention on, and a lot of effort goes into that. And Koeberg is a Generation 2 nuclear power station, and it's been very safe. It's been running for 35 years, and it seems to be doing fine, and it's probably got another 35 to 40 years life left in it. But the nuclear industry decided, look, that's not safe enough. We want to even make it more safer. So they've actually developed the Gen 3 nuclear reactors. Generation 3 reactors have a lot of intrinsic safety systems in it, and it's really is a quantum leap in performance and safety. It doesn't make the Gen 2s and the Gen 1 reactors unsafe, so don't get me wrong on it. This is just a lot more safer. And that's what we've been going through right now. Over the last decade, we've been building the first of a kind of Gen 3 nuclear reactors. There's new technology, new ideas, new standards. Regulatory safety requirements have increased since the likes of Fukushima and Chernobyl and all those incidences. This is how the nuclear industry improves itself, is through the experience that it has in these situations. So the horror stories that you're hearing about some of these plants taking many years, longer than anticipated, is because it's the first-of-a-kind technology, and they do tend to take a long time to build. However, is South Africa going to engage in a first-of-a-kind technology? It is unlikely. We will probably be looking at the nth generation. So we would probably look at units 8, 9, 10 that's been built around the world, and we will get all the lessons learnt from those other projects that have been built elsewhere. And a lot of those, that experience will come into the projects here in South Africa. South Africans aren't going to build this on their own. They will have international partners with them, with all that wealth of experience that comes out of that industry, to make sure that we don't push into massive cost and time overruns. So it's from that experience, I think it's a safe bet. Was it done at Kusile and Medupi? No. I was around when those projects came to the market in 2004, and we were starting to run into a situation where the lights were shutting down, and we had to get as much power onto the grid as quick as possible. And they signed these amazing contracts very quickly, and there was no localization. There was no development programs on how we're going to build up the South African resource from a next to nothing, where it was at the time, to somebody that goes and builds some very sophisticated power plant like these coal-fired plants. The nuclear build program needs to go through a completely different approach, and that's why I've said earlier, don't rush it. It's something that we've got to give it time so that we can make sure we don't make the same mistakes as we have on Kusile and Medupi.
Okay. Can I add to that quickly?
Sure.
You know, for me, you know, what the President said in the State of the Nation address on nuclear actually was one of the better things that he said in terms of evaluating the price. Because as Eve made reference to, you need to look at what inquiry comes out and what the respective value proposition is of the vendor country with their respective technology. It's about the value proposition and what risks they're prepared to take and what risks they're prepared to take on behalf of our economy. If you take simply the macroeconomic environment that we look at in South Africa pertaining to labor, and you compare that to the macroeconomic environment that they have in China, it's vastly different. If you look at the way the Medupi project was structured from Eskom's standpoint, and they did a lot to try and encourage localization as well in the form of different packages, maybe they were too ambitious with regards to that approach. So it's all got to do with what sort of risk countries are willing to take on behalf, and what sort of macroeconomic environment conditions are we going to impose as a country. Because if you go into China, and I would love to have, you know, in the future discussions, a Chinese colleague, and I stayed in China for 5 years, by the way, but to ask why are they able to run two separate projects pretty much within budget and on schedule. And it's largely, in my opinion, and maybe Eve, you can elaborate, or Victor, on the macroeconomic environment that they're exposed to, licensing authorities, how they deal with labor. And so those are topics of discussion that we should look at. Also, as a country, don't be too overly ambitious to localize either, because do we want to, as a country, compete internationally on particular supply chain scopes of work? You know, and if we look back at what we did in the renewable program, open the books, guys, and let's see how much real localization transpired, where, to be honest with you, it's probably the simplest area that you can encourage localization. You know, where you pick a particular technology, you standardize, you encourage local manufacturing, and you can roll out localization in that shape or form. Here you're dealing with a nuclear program, which is exceptionally sophisticated, and just a bit of promotion, we're hosting a workshop on the road to nuclear compliance on the 8th of April. But maybe our industry don't want to go on that road to nuclear compliance because they won't be competitive enough against international supply chains. So we need to be very careful on what sort of expectations we have as a country, and we can mitigate risk on cost overruns too. Hello, GP.
Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just been joined by another panelist, Gaupalelwe Santswere from the South African Young Nuclear Professional Society. Welcome to you. Would you like to introduce yourself and your organization quickly, and then we can carry on with the conversation?
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Gaupalelwe Santswere. I'm a executive chairperson of the South African Young Nuclear Professional Society. I'm also a nuclear physicist.
Okay, great. Part of the criticism that has been raised against government's process that it's followed to procure nuclear has been the issue of taking on a strategic partner versus negotiating a long-term fixed price. And I was wondering if there was a particular view from the panel on that basis.
Well, this is the matter of the government.
Yeah.
We can't be responsible for the government. The government has launched the procurement process. The RFP has not been issued yet. We're still looking for the RFP, and definitely when it is issued, we'll put.
Then you'll structure accordingly.
Then we'll structure accordingly. We'll act accordingly. We are prepared to abide by the rules of the government.
Okay.